It's a topic in Sarah Eisen's panel today with Ohio Senator Rob Portman in Aspen, and they both join us now. Sarah.
Hi, John. Nice to see you, and it's good to have Senator Portman here from my home state of Ohio.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
So we just got off a panel together. We were talking about small business, and you said you think we're either in or going into recession. Fed Chair Jay Powell today still thinks there's a shot at a soft landing. Why are you not there?
Well, I'd love to see a soft landing, and I hope that's true, but we just saw the revised numbers from the first quarter. A lot of people don't realize we actually were at negative economic growth in the first quarter, and 2 quarters of that technically is a recession. So I don't know, nobody knows, but I suspect we're probably going to be negative economic growth again. In any case, for most Americans, it sure feels like a recession already because they're paying $5 for a gallon of gas, because they are seeing food costs go up dramatically, clothing costs, everything. And so, you know, for working families in Ohio, they're already pulling back and cutting back. And so I think the recession mentality, unfortunately, is upon us.
So inflation is the big problem, as you alluded to, for our economy right now. And I know that you can play the blame game, and I know you and your party put some of the blame on President Biden. But what are Republicans proposing to do about it that the administration is not?
Well, it's pretty simple in the sense that, you know, demand is exceeding supply still, so we've got to do more on the supply side. On the demand side, the Fed is taking its role. They're raising interest rates. No one wants to see that, but that'll dampen demand. It's already happening. They'll probably, by the way, have to go higher based on the history of.
You think the Fed's done a good job?
They were slow, as almost always. It's easy to look back in retrospect, but they were slow to come to the table. If they'd raised interest rates a little bit earlier on, it would have been better. I think pretty much everyone agrees with that. But with regard to the supply side, we've got to have a more productive economy. So we have to ensure that we are producing here in America the oil and gas that we need for our economy. When we do that, you'll see gas prices begin to go down. We talked about worker retraining. You know, we've got to be sure we are a more productive economy. We've got to reskill people quickly, be sure we're competitive in the global marketplace. We've talked a lot about semiconductors and being reliant on other countries around the world that don't like us much for some of the essential products that we have. China. So this new legislation on the Competition Act, it's called, or USICA, is about semiconductors, the CHIPS Act, but it's also about this broader issue of making our economy more competitive. I would also argue that the infrastructure bill is going to be good because it will actually be counterinflationary as you begin to build long-term assets. But we need to back off on the stimulus, which causes the demand and overheated the economy. The $1.9 trillion from last March was a real problem. So I disagree with the Biden administration on that, but we also have to do much more on the supply side.
So the CHIPS Act, because you're like right in the thick of this. Intel wants to build the 2 plants in Ohio. He delayed the groundbreaking ceremony. We talked about this. Pat Gelsinger on this show said yesterday it's game time for Congress, and he wants to see it before the recess, the August recess. What is the likelihood of that right now?
Well, I hope it happens. I've spent most of my time out here rather than being with you at these great panels and trying to help on that process. But I think we'll probably get it done because it just makes so much sense. We're falling way behind. Semiconductors are in everything. They're essential to our economy. We used to produce a lot of them. In fact, we came up with the whole technology. 30 years ago, we had about 37% of the production here in America. Now we're down to 12%. 90% of the high-end semiconductors are being produced in one country, in Asia, Taiwan. So we're reliant on other countries right now. You see this with the automobiles where people can't get a car because they're lined up in a parking lot somewhere waiting for the semiconductors to be added. But it's about electronics. It's about everything we do in our lives. It's more digital. And then it's about our national security. And that's incredibly important to me that we have a semiconductor industry here in the United States we can rely on for our F-35 fighters, for all of the more sophisticated military technology that we need to keep that qualitative advantage.
It seems like a no-brainer, and it is a bipartisan issue. So what is the holdup here?
Well, it's bipartisan, but the House bill and Senate bills were very, very different. I would argue that the House bill should have looked more like the Senate bill because we passed the Senate bill 15 months ago. It was entirely bipartisan. We negotiated with Democrats in the Senate. As a Republican, I was one of the people negotiating, but also negotiated with the White House. We came out with a bipartisan product. The House, over 11 months of adding to it, came up with a bunch of stuff that could get virtually no Republican support and sent it back, and now we're in conference with them trying to figure it out. So it's been made more complicated, in my view, by not understanding that, you know, this is an essential and urgent matter for us to address, and the bipartisan compromises had largely been worked out. So my hope is we can come together.
Right, because I mean, Gelsinger threatened, and others too, that they'll put that money overseas into Europe, where they are getting now subsidies.
Europe and Asia. We just had a silicon wafer company say that they're going to actually produce in South Korea rather than in Texas because of the CHIPS Act not being passed. So we do need to pass this, and generally we need to ensure we have a competitive economy here. And there's more than just the CHIPS Act in this legislation, including protecting our research from China, because over the last 2 decades, unfortunately, China has identified the best researchers, the best research, and taken that back to China, often helping them to leapfrog us.
So you think it gets done before the August recess, not before the? We don't have to wait till after the midterms.
I think it's got to get done quickly. If not, these companies are going to make decisions to go elsewhere. You mentioned the fact that Germany's put euros on the table, and so have countries in Asia, a lot more than we're putting on, by the way. So we're not going to be as generous with our incentives as they are, but we're doing enough to be able to incentivize these companies to produce here. We've got to bring things back and reshore it to America, things that we need that are essential.
Well, I know you're in the thick of it. I know you've been taking calls the whole time. Senator Rob Portman, thank you very much
for
taking the time.